Welcome to Get Rich Without Being a Bitch. This is the place to hear real and raw conversations about what it takes for female entrepreneurs to achieve financial success and live a rich life. I'm Vanessa Shaw, author of The $1 Million Question, and your hostess for this podcast. Welcome to our latest edition of the podcast, Get Rich Without Being a Bitch. And today's guest, already giggling at that title, is Jennifer Urezzio. Did I say that right, Jennifer?
You said it perfectly. You said it the correct way. We say Urezzio in my family, but it's wrong.
Okay, God.
I'll be honest.
As I said it, I was like, oh my gosh, am I actually saying that right? But, you know, my European roots helped with that.
Totally.
Jennifer is a master intuitive and the founder of Soul Language. And she's primarily working with a group of entrepreneurs that, you know, refer to themselves as spiritual renegades, in the sense that they're just not going to be doing business the way everybody else is doing it. So I want to dive into that later. Before we go there, and I know you've got a beautiful body of work that you are, you know, working with your own clients around, and particularly around the kind of relational aspects of money, which is a subject that's very near and dear to my own heart, Jennifer, because listen, we're in relationship with everything in the world, right? I mean, it's not just money. I mean, we're in relationship with other people, with our businesses, you know, with our health, with our habits. I love the concept that we've got this relationship with money, because therefore I believe it's something that we can look at and adjust and shift. And you've got some very powerful work that you do that we're going to be like coming into, because I think our listeners are going to love that. However, what I'd love to know is kind of the backstory, because I think most of us don't get into this work just because it's interesting, right? It's like we've learned some really important lessons, and often painful lessons along the way. And we want to take that so we can help other people on the path. So just bring us up to speed a little bit about your backstory and your own relationship with money growing up.
Yeah. So all relationships are internal, whether it's a relationship with money, relationship with your health, or relationship with your mate, right? You're putting into it your level of consciousness, which really means your level of wholeness and completeness. So I wasn't whole. I believed I wasn't whole and complete for most of my life. And it showed up also in my money. Now, I didn't have any problems, getting money or the words money out of my mouth of how much I wanted. What I had problems with was keeping it or squirreling it away or feeling like it would abandon me. And these are all mommy and daddy issues, right? I love my parents, but they did the best they can and they had their heritage. And I was born to two individuals that were bankers. So I would frequently work out my crap by yelling at bank tellers, right? I would...
Those poor bank tellers.
Those poor bank tellers. I like to go up and apologize to all the ones I was. You know, that warrior nature of having to fight for what I wanted and what I needed. You know, I believed, like I believed in every aspect of my life, that I would be abandoned, that I was not good enough, that no matter how hard I try, I was never going to receive what I wanted, that I had to make war to get anything I wanted. And that, you know, I was, in the smallest of terms and the biggest of terms, unlovable. Now, my parents were great parents, and I know all clients say that, but my parents were great parents, right? They did their best, and yet they had their sneaky little ways. I remember being in the grocery store once, and my mother, I was debating, I was young, I was in my 20s, and I was in my first apartment alone because I had roommates up until then, and I was debating on whether to get Entenmann's cakes. My mom's like, Jennifer, buy the cake because no one's going to buy anything for you but you. And I know what she meant in reality, but that's not how it felt. It felt like, oh my God, no one is ever going to take care of me. And that meant money as well, because I was putting no one's ever going to take care of me, including my relationship with divinity and money, which is just a form of divinity in itself. And I had to really work that one out. And that always showed up in this kind of non-receiving. And I'll tell you a very funny story because it just happened a couple of months ago. Last October, I broke my ankle. Okay. Now, I have a broken ankle. It's October. I have a dog. It's 9:00 at night and I'm downstairs walking the dog with my broken leg in a boot. And my landlord comes out and goes, Jennifer, why didn't you ask? I would have walked the dog. And I was like, I just can't ask. I don't know. I couldn't ask for help. And he goes, but you can always ask me for help. And he goes, and Jennifer, why are you not wearing a shoe? It's October, right? I had worked myself in such a lather about not being able to ask for help, for being very strong, very independent, which was my mother, right?
Yeah.
And she had to be, right? She was a single mom. She was very far, like 45 minutes, which is, forever when you're, 23 or 24 from her parents. Right. And so she had to push through a lot of stuff to support her family. So I grew up fiercely independent. That doesn't always work when you're asking to receive, right? You have to be safe to be vulnerable. So that was a big, huge additional learning for me lately. So that's kind of some of the backstory of Jed and how I got here. And listen, I'm very well aware the more I know, the less I know. And I know that in order to receive more, I've got to let go of those parts of me that are in conflict with that. And that takes internal tools, and it takes practice, and it takes awareness, and it takes support. So my mission is all about connecting and not being free of struggle. So I know that I'm great at building content, and that I get to be less judgmental with myself when I'm in that resistance of receiving.
Yeah, it's so interesting, isn't it? And it's also linked, as you say. It's like we've got to understand, like, yeah, where do we inherit these patterns from in the first place?
Yeah.
I had two very different parents, one that spent it all, one that was super frugal. So a lot of stress, right? My mother was the frugal one. My father was the one just, it would just come in and disappear. And she had 4 kids, right? She had to be frugal. She had 4 kids that she had to take care of, and she wasn't earning money, right? This was back in the days when women weren't working and everything. So she was very dependent on like my dad's paycheck. And so I witnessed just a lot of stress around money. And I can see where, I can bounce between the two, right? I kind of inherited I saw the stress that my mother had around money. And, my story was, I don't want to be like that. But for many years, that pushed me the other way. Right. It's like oftentimes we just go to an extreme, right? It's like, I don't want to be like that. So we go the other way. And it really wasn't in a healthy, integrated place, because there's so many good things in there. And then, with my father as well, it's kind of like, well, I don't want to go like that way either. Right. So, we can find ourselves bouncing around in the middle until we really find like around who do we want to be, right? Like in that relationship with money. And I love what you said. It's like the internal tools of receiving, because that, to this day, I mean,
A game changer. Yeah.
it's a game changer. It really is a game changer. And honestly, it's something I'm constantly working on as well.
You have to, because your soul
Constantly.
is right. It's always saying more, more, more. And so you have to kind of, be aware of where you're holding yourself back. If you are a vessel of receiving, you have to figure out where that vessel is either leaking or not willing to, be filled. And so it's always kind of a game. And I think it's really important to understand that it's a game and it's not life and death, because so often we make all of this life and death, and it's really not. It's a game. It's about choices. It's about, what place do you want to come from? Do you want to come from pain or programming, or do you want to come from a place of wholeness and completeness? And Vanessa, some days I'm great at that wholeness and completeness, and some days I am just not good at it. And that's okay. I think people who are in or transforming or want to make a difference and want to have a different life always feel like they have to be picture perfect about everything.
Yes. Yeah.
It's not going to happen.
We've got to acknowledge our humanity in this, right? And as you said, it's like, and I love the idea of that this is a game, because for me that brings some lightness to it, so we're not overly serious and kind of like get into this navel gazing right around it and never get out of it. And it's interesting, just kind of stories, on the receiving side. My story around money, which I've shared on the podcast, and kind of it filters through the podcast here, but definitely great at generating it, not so good at keeping it, right? So spending it was, obviously my father was, that side of the relationship was showing up, but I was better at most, or let's see, the role models I had in terms of generating it. And so for me, that keeping it was a real lesson in receiving, right? It's like, because I didn't realize that I wasn't receiving it. It was just kind of passing through me and my bank account rather rapidly. And it was being more comfortable with, higher levels of dollars in the bank account, right? It's like, that is a level of receiving. And just recently, I want to share, kind of like, as you're sparking stories, somebody that might be listening to this, and you kind of think, I'm not so good about asking for help, right? These are great places to start in terms of just how can we just receive from other people. We don't always have to be brave in terms of, hey, I've got a broken ankle and I'm just muscling through here, right, with one shoe on, and it's possibly snow and ice outside. Wherever you live, it's right, October time, it could be.
Very snowy, very icy.
Yeah. I imagine it's like when you tell the story, I'm like, oh my Lord, right? She's, muscling through so much on this that she's forgotten the shoe. She's, possibly your landlord is even thinking it'd be nice if you weren't stomping around the place with the boot on, right? And I could help you. And there's that, I think sometimes we see it as a sign of weakness, right? To ask for help, depending on our upbringing. My mother as well was very stoic, right? And like would do things, that Britishness. And so there was definitely that side of, it's a bit of a sign of weakness to admit that you even need or want help. One of the things that I discovered along that journey is that when somebody else is offering help and assistance, and really from a genuine place, like clearly your landlord was, when we say no to it and we kind of stop that flow, like we're robbing them of the gift of giving.
Yeah. Right? And here's the thing, if you're doing all this giving, who's doing all the receiving, right?
Right.
And you have to understand the balance of that giving and receiving circle, right? If it's out of balance, your energy is going to be wonky. And so it's going to be like the old cartoon Ricochet Rabbit, where it's like bing, 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 bing. And you're going to be creating based on this stiff arming the universe. No. I got everything I need. Really? Because you're in the snow with no shoe. Do you really have everything you need, Jen? Right? Yeah. It's, I tell this story about being in the post office, and this woman has a baby carriage with, 3 babies, right? And all the packages are on top of it. And she goes to open that heavy post office door. You know how heavy those doors are. And I'm like, can I help you? She's like, no, I got it. And I was like, no, you really don't. Like, let me help you. And it becomes this really beautiful exchange if you allow to step in yourself into that exchange. And that stepping in is really about consciousness. If you pause and go, okay, if I knew I was whole and complete, what would I say? What would I do here? We would make a lot of different decisions. Mm. And that the energy of the world would flow in a lot easier, lot graceful pace. But we're all kind of in our own heads, in our weird secret programming agendas, that we don't take enough time to go, if I knew I was whole and complete, what would I say? What would I do here? Mm. And that will really change your game if you do that one little exercise.
Yeah, I love that. Sometimes those questions, right, to prompt us back, right? Prompt us back to whatever the language is, to our greatness, to our wholeness, to the highest expression of ourselves. I love those questions for that, because as you say, we can quickly see that notice that we're off track, but we don't always have the tools to get ourselves back. I want to switch here. I mean, we're kind of going from, this whole notion of giving and receiving, and the relationships that we've had inherited from our parents and around money. And then, okay, so we get to this place, and this is a lot of the work that I know that you do with your clients. And we might discover, as I did, that actually my relationship with money was pretty dysfunctional, right? It was not a healthy one. And it was one of, for me, I'll explain, mine was, frankly, love hate, I would describe it as, right? Kind of loved it when the money was in, hated it when I didn't understand it, hated it when I had money stress. I certainly had, like, we've gone through, periods of massive debt, like really a lot of debt a long time ago. And then that whole money being a mystery, it felt like it was a mystery to me back then. So it pushed me into this love-hate relationship. And I would say very dysfunctional. If anything, triggering like my inner child, right? I call it like the inner 5-year-old that starts to run the show, because I just didn't understand where I was coming from. Tell us about how you help people, lead people through like healing that part of us, because there can be such a lot of shame. I mean, I know I experienced that, like shame and embarrassment and guilt. And that's easily like a whole tunnel that we can go down if we're not careful. So lead us through how we start to just navigate that and actually heal that part of us.
Yeah. The thing with, our relationship with money, it's really a reflection of how we feel about divinity and, in a sense, how we feel about our essential nature, right? So when you heal that relationship, you heal everything. In soul language, when we identify a person's soul languages, which you have 3, we then work with the inner child to reparent that through that energy. But some really simple little and profound exercises are, you want to sit down and you want to look at your inner child, need any eye to eye in your mind's eye. And you want to really have that conversation about, when you get money, what do you feel and what do you do and why? I remember I would get money, and there was a pattern of, I would get money and I would be waiting for the pain, because when I was 3, I got a new shiny penny and I went to show my mother the penny and I fell and I hit the corner of the door and I had 11 stitches.
Oh,
So
yeah.
money, pain, right? And the moment I realized, in conversation with my little girl, oh, but that's not what money really is. And she went, oh. I was like, that was just an accident. That was just a mistake. That was just something that happened. Let me tell you what money is. Truly money is, right? There was no longer waiting for that money and that pain. So you want to really sit down and have that conversation with that little person inside of you and really talk from a loving parental perspective. And then you want to go, okay, so you tell me, little one, how do we nurture you having a better relationship with yourself, me, and money? And ask that person, that little tiny kid inside of you, what they need, because they will answer. And then your job is to nurture it. You also need to notice and be aware in the present moment. So when you get money, you have to pause and check in. And I always tell clients, okay, you want to see yourself on a train platform. Okay. Do you want to get on the train to paint and programming, which is fine. So, okay, it's acceptable. I have houses there. I'm the mayor. I have condos. It's okay. Or do you want to make a better choice? Right. And the better choice is, thank you. I'm grateful. Wow. Isn't this cool? Yes. Can I have more? Right. So, and listen, you don't want to do all your money tools or all of your expansion tools at once. Pick a tool, work with it for a while, and then work on another tool. If you try to do it, listen, I'm action oriented. I'm warrior nature. I know I want to get it done. I'm a steel marshmallow, right? Hard on the outside, fluffy on the inside, right?
Love that steel marshmallow.
Right? You want to get it all done. You can't. You're going to stress yourself out. And here's the thing around shame. Shame is the lowest vibration there is. You actually require support to energetically move from shame to the next level. There's not enough life force around that subject for you to do it alone. And I think most people go, oh, I'm so shameful, I'll just read a book and do this alone.
Yes.
Right? And that's actually not benefiting you. You actually get to be witnessed and someone go, oh, I hear you. And I love you anyway, because that's what everyone's afraid of.
I love that. I want to actually really pause there because there's something you said that is so profound around this. And listen, for our audience, whoever's listening in, right, you might be hearing this for the first time, like, oh my gosh, like this feels like psychotherapy, and we're going back, and like little child might like, I never thought about that before, right? But the truth is, the reality is, we've all had experiences that were at some level traumatic, right? And whether it's traumatic little t or big T, right? There's a whole range of things there, but where we lock in an association, right? And that's what you're saying there is that whole, the shiny penny. I'm sure you were so proud and so excited at the time. Like, look, I can see, right, the little girl that would be like, oh my gosh, look what I've got, right? And it wouldn't have been something that you would have had before. So it would have felt like you had a big diamond in your hand. And then right in that moment, as you say, fall, crack your head open, and now you've got a doctor hospital experience with stitches, which is not very good. And so we all get that place where we have those things locked in. What we have to understand is they really do get locked in energetically and emotionally. And a lot of that is we are largely unaware of.
Right.
And that's where I've shared some of my stories before. That's where we don't realize, as you say, like my inner 5-year-old was still running the show because I really wasn't aware of like where that all stemmed from. But then it meant that I could actually just at least start to recognize and have the awareness, and the awareness gave me more choice.
Yeah, once you put words to it, it doesn't hold any power. And the thing about trauma, whether it's little t, as you say, or big T, when you experience trauma, and even when you experience goodness, you hold your breath for a second, and that sets up an energetic pattern in your system and in your cells. When you have trauma, also the trauma response for humans is to go very small, very quiet, fade into the background. So if you've had trauma or your heart's been broken around money, anytime money comes up, your instinct to be safe is to go very small, very hidden, which means you won't utilize your voice. You'll act on pattern, right? You'll be consumed by this feeling of non-safety. And all of those energetic and physical patterns can be reorganized, released, and created a new pattern for your sustainability. Because the truth is, all of that is just experience. It's not who you are on a core level. And people take it because it's an experience as their essential nature, as who they are.
Totally. I love this conversation. It's so important. The piece I want to link with is the other piece that you said around this, which is around shame. Because, right, as you said, whatever that is, right, the trauma, little t or big T, whatever it is, and sometimes it can feel like, the silliest of things, I have clients that, often coming, it's like the confession, like, oh my gosh, Vanessa, I hate asking this question. I really don't know how to do this. I feel like I should. I can hear all the shoulding and the shame, right? And it's like, if we don't get those conversations out under the spotlight, we remain prisoner to them. And I loved what you said there is like, from an energetic standpoint, and I think we, even people that are like not thinking energetically, right? They're not used to that language in that world. Is that when we are feeling shame, it's like, as you said, like feel into what that feels like, what the felt experience is for you. And it's back to, as you said, being small, right? Really wanting to contract. We want to hide. We want to keep it a secret. Like this is not something we want to share. And that energy is incredibly difficult to dig out of or up level on our own, because the one thing that keeps shame in place is secrecy.
Silence.
So it's the silence, right? It's the silence, and the secrecy is the very thing that keeps it in place. So I think that that's just so important, Jen, that we really, so I love this podcast, right? It's like we've got to normalize these conversations and have more of them so that we realize that our shame, is not just ours and it's unique. There's a humanness to it. Yeah. And there are also things as well, like societally, that will keep it in place.
Yeah. There's there's nothing unique about our pain or our shame. What is truly unique about us is our connection, is how we view who we are on a deep level. Pain and suffering is kind of universally across the board the same. The details might be different. And
Yeah.
that's not to say, poo-poo anyone's, suffering. What I'm really saying is it's universal. Like, you're not alone. And I think so often people don't want to talk about what's going on in their head or their programming because they don't want to feel like I must be the only one. Like, this must just be my experience. And when you have those conversations, what you realize is you're not alone. And if you're not alone in that, then you're not alone in a lot of other things.
Yeah.
And then you can also start to receive more and more support, including money support from the world, because now you're not isolating yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. No, so important. So we were going to kind of going off on some tangents here. We were talking about, as you say, nurturing the little person inside of us and really understanding what they need. What else do we need to do in terms of just healing that relationship where we've got, some money wounds that are running deep?
Yeah, I think a lot of money programs don't work because they're trying to create based on heartbreak. So heartbreak shows up in any bankruptcy, any large debt. It could be betrayal amount money, whether that's you actually having experience or a family betrayal. It could look like you had everything and then you didn't have anything. So there's a bunch of heartbreak situations, but we all know that when we try to go on a date after having our heart broken, we're like a wet sponge, right?
Yeah.
There's no interaction and we're constantly comparing or licking our wounds. So when you try to do a money program and you have heartbreak, what you're doing is you're trying to create on a foundation that's cracked. So one of the things, I created a program called Coming Back After Money Broke Your Heart with Jennifer Bloom, who's freaking amazing. And, one of the things that we work on is, okay, so how can you be in the energy of the solution of healing the heartbreak? So often we keep asking the same questions. And those questions are like, how can I have more money? How can I be more profitable? That hasn't worked up until this point. Let's ask a new question. Like, how can I heal the heartbreak? How can I know that money's my friend? Show me how I'm really good with money at times. Show me where I'm accurate or right when it comes to money. Show me where I have no fear when it comes to money, because all of that is where you can bring that knowledge into here and now, right? You want to make sure that you're not repeating your patterns time and time again, right? So you want to be aware. So before you actually have to talk about money, you want to really understand what's happening with your heart. Because we've all had that moment where our heart was broken. We actually like, oh my God, this is what they mean. Like it actually feels broken, right?
It is painful. Yes.
Right. So you want to tune in and just go, okay, heart, tell me what you think about money, how you feel about it. What does it look like? Right. And then you want to start to go, okay, heart, show me what it looks like when you're healed around money. Right. And then you can kind of set the stage. So whenever you have to talk about money, you're just going to tune in and go, okay, we're going to activate our healed heart. And we're going to talk from that place. We're going to do about that place. One of the tangible tools that I tell people is like, okay, we're going to get out all of our little money things and we're going to look at it all. Right? I want you to not really understand what you owe, what you don't owe, what you're paying, what you've been hiding away. And we're going to start to clear it all up, because all of that is energy leaks, right? And all of that is, I'm going to shove it under the carpet because it's bringing me too much pain.
Yes.
And the key to do that is you want to keep activating safety in your body. And that's simple by utilizing your body. So it looks like divine intelligence. Fill me with the feeling and knowing that I'm safe. And you do it 100 times as you're looking at your money situation, right? This is not, when you look at your money, this is not who you are.
Yeah.
This is just based on choices.
Yeah. So important. This is so important. And I love that approach, right? It's just, it's a gentler approach, right? It's an emotional approach as well, and a somatic approach to an emotional issue, because as you say, the whole, I mean, we ask those questions, right? We like the rational, the profitable, and all the rest of it, but that's only activating one level of intelligence. And we can't solve an emotional problem, right, at that cognitive level.
Right.
And I love, Jen, what you said there. Again, this is such an important message, because again, it goes back into that shame, I think, spiral for so many women, myself included. That's been the past. Is this is not who I am. Right. We quickly kind of blackwash, right, ourselves with it, don't we? It's like, oh my gosh, like I made all of, like, I made all of those messes. I'm not good with money, da, 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 da. And then it's this direct link into our own self-worth of, like, I am a bad person.
Right.
Because of
there's something must be wrong with me. I need to be fixed. Yeah. Right. If you look at money for a moment as a relationship, right? Because it is. But if you look at it and really take the time to really sit down and go, okay, money, what is my money outlook saying about how I think and how I feel? Right. Because I can change that, which will change the external. But so often people try to change the external without changing the internal. And then they have a little transformation, but they don't do transcendence. It doesn't stick because they're still operating based on that heartbreak or based on that lack.
Yes.
Right. And so in all of this, you gotta treat yourself with love and respect and go, So my best friend has a kid. And when he was, I think, maybe he was 7, he went to this party and this kid was like on him. And after like 5 times, Eric went, I'm going to go all WWE on you if you don't behave. Right. So on the ride home, his mom looks at him and he goes, I could have done that better. And that's the outlook we need. I could have done that better. Right.
Yeah.
No shame in that. I could have done that better. How can I do this better? Yeah. How can I use what's inside of me, which is whole and complete, to create better? You've just been off the mark. That's all you need to understand. You're off the mark. Yeah. And I think another, reason is people are like, they have this moving target when it comes to money. And, they don't have a big why around money. Like, why, what is money equal to you? So for me, money always equals freedom. Okay. So if I want more money, then I have to feel free no matter what's going on. Right. And really keep being in that. And then money will be attracted to that because I'm at that same vibration. Yeah. Really understand why you want money. I mean, besides eating and food and all of that and rent and blah, blah, blah. But what do you want money to kind of collaborate to do for you?
Yeah.
How is it your...
What I'm hearing there, Jen, as you said, it's like the emotional, right? Once you have, again, this is connecting in right at the emotional level. And listen, we talk about money, why, and everything. Like, what are you going to use it for? Right? It's like money needs clarity. But you're going at this level of the emotional level so that you are actually aligned with the outcome that you want to achieve, right? So it's back to, if money signifies that sense of freedom, how do you actually start to create a sense of freedom for yourself now in the absence of like the real dollars in the bank account, so that you're kind of energetically aligned with actually bringing it into your world?
Yeah. And I think so often, when I'm talking about the relationship with divinity, because that's my mission, I go, okay, so how are you treating this God goo, universal Bob, God cupcake, whatever you want to call it? How are you treating it? Are you treating it like the white knight in shining armor? Are you treating it like Santa Claus, the naughty or nice list? Like, how are you treating it? Because that's how you treat money as well. Right. And really going, because I used to treat it like the white knight in shining armor, like money's here to save the day. And I would put myself in these crazy situations and it would always save the day, but that's super stressful. Right. Yeah. So, I had to have that healing of that heartbreak so it could be continuously flow. And if there are dips in the business, I still know I'm safe, right? I think people associate money with safety and security all the time. And that's just an illusion that we've created based on the society that we live in, right? So if we were trading in goats, we'd be having the same conversation about goats. So how can you, again, activate that feeling, that consciousness of safety internally so you can put that into your relationship with money rather than the lack or this push pull, this making more with it that we normally do.
Yeah. So good, Jen. Oh my gosh. I could chat to you all day about this. Obviously one of my favorite topics to talk about. We do need to kind of put a bow on this for today, kind of like tie it up in a neat knot. What would be like a third area that somebody really should be looking at in terms of healing, that money relationship after heartbreak?
I think that they really want to look at how they feel about love. So often, love and money are tied together in this weird, icky, sticky way, right? People have utilized money to, here, show you a big gift. I'll show you I love you, right? So we really want to separate that. And we want to understand that we're loved and supported no matter what, and really understand the role of money in our lives instead of it mixing it into this kind of codependent relationships that we have. So often, really sit down and have a conversation with you. How do I view money and love? How are they linked, if they are linked? And why is that so? And then, go, okay, so how do I start to unravel that? Right? One of the things that you want to start to unravel that is really to show and nurture yourself completely with love rather than having it all mixed up. So start small, right? Start looking in the mirror, which is Louise Hay, which is the hardest thing to do, is to look in the mirror, look at your eyes and tell you love yourself. I love you, right? It's one of the hardest things to do. People always turn away until you practice it. And then you're like, hey, I love you. Start there. That's the easiest thing to do and most profound thing to do, to start to unravel the love and money thing.
Yeah. You know what, we might have to do a whole other episode on this, because I think I agree. The love and money piece is massive. That was a huge part of my experience as well. And at a pretty young age, again, I think I've shared this on one of my earlier podcasts. My parents divorced, and then my father stopped paying the maintenance money that he was supposed to pay for me and my younger brother. And that for me, I just couldn't understand it, and for me, that directly meant like you're withdrawing money, you don't love me.
Yeah.
Right. And it was just those, and I wasn't, old enough to see that this was a power battle with my mother, and this was more about them. And it was, that's how I received that. And then later on, interestingly enough, kind of how that translated when I got married and was wanting to build my own business, was I didn't realize that unconsciously I was carrying, an old programming was I could be successful in love or in business, like, career. I couldn't have both.
A lot of women have that one. A lot of women,
Yes.
And I think that that's ingrained, for millennium of, the power struggles between, male and female, and providing and receiving, and, what role you're going to take on in the community, right? It's a huge topic. And, there's the dog, just start to notice where, that feels icky and sticky. A lot of people will notice, well, I don't want to say this dollar amount because, I want them to like me and I'm afraid they don't like me, or I don't know if they can afford that. And you're having their journey for them. Like,
yeah,
what's going on, right? That's about love. And that's also, if you're empathic, that's also about all of the stuff that you witnessed or ingested growing up around love and money as well. And that has to be released too.
Yeah. I think we're going to pause there, because I think that is just, it is most definitely a place for noticing. And as I say, for women, and we could most definitely dive in. I think we've got to have you back at some point, Jen, and dive into that one, because I know it was a huge part of my journey, something I continue to study and look at. And it is a huge part of that conversation for women, the love and money piece. And I want to live in a world where we're transforming that, and it's the and it's not the either or. So
love it.
Oh my gosh, this was just yummy and delicious and so good and thought-provoking. Just a last piece of a nugget that you would leave with our audience today. If there was one gem that you wanted to share in parting, what would it be?
Yeah, I always tell my clients, if you knew you were whole and complete, what would you say? What would you do? What would you express in every situation? That's the come to place you want to try. That's the consciousness you want to be. If you do that one little thing, you're golden.
Love that. I'm going to make sure as well, we'll get your contact details and everything in the show notes. So if people, you want to look at Jen's work and really look at healing your own relationship there with money, and just know that she is very masterful around this. Jen, from my heart to yours, thank you for joining me today on the podcast.
Thank you. It's an honor, and I'm so excited to have been here. So thank you. It was so much fun.
Always, right?